To introduce our panel, A Role Without a Rulebook, the Influence and Leadership of Global First Ladies, please welcome Vice President of Geosciences at ExxonMobil, Pamela Darwin.
Well, good morning. I'm really delighted to be here with you at the Concordia Summit and sincerely appreciate the opportunity to share a few thoughts from ExxonMobil about this important panel discussion. It's a privilege to be here with women who hold a unique place in the history of their countries and the world, and who are continuing to build legacies that will endure for decades to come. One of the signature activities of the ExxonMobil Foundation is our Women's Economic Opportunity Initiative. And through that work, we are proud to partner with the Bush Institute's First Ladies Initiative. Throughout her years in public service, including her time in the East Wing of the White House, Mrs. Bush has been making a critical difference among women business owners and political leaders in helping empower women economically. I was honored to travel to Namibia this year with the Bush Institute and see firsthand how Mrs. Gangos, an accomplished lawyer and entrepreneur, is improving the lives of women in that country. Also joining the panel today is Mrs. Castillo de Varela, the First Lady of Panama. She's an advocate, and we met backstage for equality and universal health care. So all three women very passionate about their countries and really empowering women. Since 2005, ExxonMobil has invested more than $110 million to help community-based and global partners implement programs that help improve the lives of tens of thousands of women in more than 90 countries. Every year, we procure goods from women-owned businesses, and we spend about $500 million a year on this. We support groundbreaking research, including the Bush Center's report that shares the same name as this panel, A Rule Without a Rulebook, as well as programs to help women business owners through more than a dozen non-government organizations like TechnoServe, the Cherie Blair Foundation for Women, Mercy Corps, Kickstart, Plan International, Vital Voices, Opportunity International, and Solar Sisters, which I'm very honored to have just joined the board of. Through my work in heading up exploration for ExxonMobil, I'm reminded all the time of the essential aspect of international development. My work focuses on Africa, and I can see it firsthand. Gender equality enhances economic productivity. It improves development outcomes for the next generation and makes institutions and policies more representative. You know, I've traveled the world and I've worked in so many developing countries, and I'm constantly inspired by the simple but powerful African proverb, when women move forward, the world moves with them. More than 500 million women have joined the global workforce in the past 30 years. And today, women account for more than half of all university students. Studies indicate that if women farmers have more access to land and fertilizers, agricultural output in developing countries increases. And when women have greater control of household resources, a country's growth is enhanced. No country can move forward when half of its population is left behind. Improving the quality of life for future generations is critical for sustainable economic growth. As a key investor at the country and community level, we really seek to ensure our efforts in bolstering economic development are sound and driven by data. And this research has shown that women drive progress in health, education, and well-being of their families and communities. The numbers are really impressive. When women control their own income, they invest 90% of it back into their families, compared with 35% for men. These are everyday women, grassroots women, who get up, go to work, and try to make it better for their families and their communities. empowering women is all about how we work together. That's what ExxonMobil strives to provide through our investments. And that's why we are inspired and honored to partner with the First Ladies in their work. It's important for the women we serve, it's important to the world's economy, and it's really important to society. The First Ladies we welcome here today are all critical at inspiring social and economic development. We're really pleased, and let me thank you again for joining us today. We're pleased for their commitment, for their partnership, and as I'm sure you'll see as the panel kicks off, for their inspiring leadership. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage former First Lady of the United States of America, Mrs. Laura Bush. First Lady of Namibia, Madam Monica Gengos. First Lady of the Republic of Panama, Lorena Castillo Garcia de Varela. And our moderator, the Executive Director of UNAIDS, Michelle Sidibe.
You ran up the stairs. Ready? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pam, for this great introduction. I would like to welcome everyone this morning. It is an honor and privilege for me to be with long-time friends. I can say Mrs. Laura Bush's personal commitment was always influencing what we have been able to do in the grassroots level. And of course, my sister Monica Gengos, First Lady of Namibia, and also Lorena Castillo. I want just to say that in UN and any other setting, we need to have more of this type of gender balance. We need to see that more often. And I'm privileged and I'm happy to be in the minority today. I know personally from the experience, from the journey of the fight against HIV/AIDS, the power of First Ladies. They have been our best allies. They have moved the agenda with skill, determination, and impact. With their contribution, we saw sea change. We have been seeing reduction in discrimination. We have been seeing reduction on new infections amongst the children. We have been seeing a strong advocacy to place social change, inclusion in the center of our action. You will hear about their commitment and how they have been also using their voice to change what we have been able to do together. The panel, you saw the title. The title is very clear. It's saying that they are doing all this great work without job description. Let me just turn to Laura Bush. I know you. We have been privileged to travel in many places from Ethiopia to Namibia together. I know that you have been always using your voice to bring attention and action to many critical issues. And you still continue to do that. You're inspiring other First Ladies to follow in your footsteps. Tell me, what really helped you to be so committed and took some issues and championed them? And how you have been, over the times, changing your approach and evolve?
Well, I think when I became First Lady, I had an advantage that other First Ladies, maybe Louisa Adams had, but no others. And I had a mother-in-law who had been First Lady. So that was a real great help to me. I had watched her. Not only had I watched her, I'd been to the White House so often. I'd slept in the Lincoln bedroom and in the Queen's bedroom. I knew the whole White House staff who are permanent. So it gave me a chance to really be able to start as soon as we moved to the White House on what I was going to work on. And of course, what happens when you're trying to figure out what to work on, when you're not elected by the people, but elected by one man only to be the First Lady, what I started with was what I already had. I was a librarian, I was a teacher. I could start working on education and literacy, which were my background. And I did host the first National Book Festival. It was on September 8th. And then on September 11th, everything changed for us. And I got, my whole role changed really. And that was because when I went out with Senator Kennedy, I was in his office, Senator Ted Kennedy, when a word came about the planes hitting the towers. And when I went out, we went out to talk to the press to say that I would not be briefing the Senate committee that day, that we would do it another day. One reporter said, "What do you say to the children?" And that really let me know that there was something I could do, that I could talk about what parents could say, that I could talk about how we could comfort people in the United States and our children and not frighten them with those images over and over of the World Trade Center being hit. So I think what happens is you come with what you have to your role as First Lady already, and then things get, you end up with interest, like my interest in Afghanistan and the women of Afghanistan, that come later because of circumstances of the time that you're there.
Thank you very much. I want just to turn to Monica. Monica Gengos, we are privileged to have you as a special advocate for adolescent girls and young people in general. We have been traveling to Namibia. You hosted there with President Bush and Mrs. Laura Bush. And it was very clear that your commitment to empower, to transform our young people is central to your agenda. We know also that this continent, particularly Africa, we have more than 60% of total population below 25 years old, and not working with them, not educating them, not giving them hope to have a job will not lead us to any form of stability. Could you tell us why did you take these issues and why you have been really accepting to be UNAIDS advocate on this critical issue?
I think I want to repeat what was said by Mrs. Bush, where you come with what you have. And I come with a 17-year-old daughter, 18-year-old son, 22-year-old son, 23-year-old daughter. So if there's someone who gets terrorized on a daily basis by young people, it's me. So it allows me to have the kind of conversations I have with my own children and listen to the issues from their perspective. And also give them some of my views, because I think there's things where I think young people are right about and are right to be feeling in a certain way, but there's other things that are just nonsense, to be quite honest. And they need to be told that. So I've enjoyed that partnership a lot, but it's really strengthened by partnerships with other organizations. I think UNAIDS being a key partner that we have. And I wasn't fortunate to have a mother-in-law in State House, but I certainly had the organization of African First Ladies, which is very important. I think the role of a First Lady is really influenced by the domestic politics. For instance, if you're operating in a country where there isn't accountability and transparency, that role may morph into something that's not constructive, because there's simply no checks and balances. Whereas if you are subject to accountability, there isn't really a question about is it a bad or a negative. It's mostly about, are you effective in what you're trying to do? So I have found myself with young people, and I think they found themselves with me. They spend their days terrorizing me on Twitter. And when I have time, I respond to them, because I think they're also tired of the sanitized versions of people in the public space, of having to deal with our staff members responding as opposed to us ourselves. So we come with what we have.
That's right.
Yeah.
George and I visited Namibia earlier this year, and we loved being in your beautiful country, and you were a really wonderful hostess. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
It was an excellent visit, indeed. I want just to turn to the First Lady of Panama. Lorena, I know when I met you for the first time, I left the room very impressed, because you told me the only things I want to do is to be advocate for people who are excluded, people who are at the margin of the society, people who are not getting any voice to be able to have access to services. It's a very difficult issue, particularly coming from Latin America. You accepted to be our advocate for that issues. Tell us, what did you learn from this experience? And what are you doing concretely to change the face of this situation?
Well, hello, everybody. Well, Michelle, first of all, the task that you gave me was very big. And I did not understand, actually, what was coming. I've been a journalist, a reporter for 20 years in my country. But I was a little more working with cancer and in other areas, never with HIV. So then I had to do my homework, of course. I had to study a lot and understand everything and get everything, so I could be a voice for the ones that didn't have voice. In Latin America, as you probably know, there's some issues that you just don't talk about. You don't talk about zero discrimination, you don't talk about gay, you don't talk about all those things you don't talk about. But we got it out, and we made sure that everyone had something to say, that everyone had a voice. And the message that I always send, it's a Catholic country. It's a very small country of only 4 million people, mostly Christians and Catholics. So, as you know, the issue was difficult to get it out and talk about it. But the first thing I said, well, yes, I'm a Catholic, but as I always say, you don't have to be my friend. You don't have to agree with the life I chose or the way I live my life. You don't have to agree to many things I do with my life. But what you have to do is to respect me, respect my life as a human being. As a zero discrimination portavoz, how do you say that? I'm sorry, I'm translating Spanish to English really quick right now. Spokesperson, thank you. For zero discrimination global, that's what I've been saying everywhere I go. You know, we're all the same. We have the same blood. We're brothers and sisters. There's no difference between us. You can be educated, or you can be a woman, or you can be a man, but it's your heart what really leads you in this world, and your respect for others. So why not giving the same opportunities to everyone, especially empowering women, being just a voice. So many people have been transformed, knowing that they're going to be respected. For the first time, I walked in a march, it was a month ago. It was the Civil Rights March and Gay March. Of course, that it's unheard of in Latin American countries. But I did it not because they were gay, or because, I did it because of respect. Because I truly feel that we're all the same. And there shouldn't be difference between us. And nobody has the right to make others feel left behind or different or mocked, there's just not right. That is just unacceptable. So that's why I carry my flag everywhere I go and my butterflies of hashtag zero discrimination, everybody. So that's why I do this.
Very good.
Monica, you just heard Lorena talking about zero discrimination. I know your also personal commitment for sexuality education, making sure that our young adolescents, when we visited Namibia, we went to the school. And it was very interesting to see how you were sharing and helping those young people to have a skill, to have a knowledge. What do you think about helping those adolescents to get information? What are you doing exactly to influence policy and others through your advocacy?
I think we're speaking to young people in their language. One of the biggest issues, and I think Latin America is similar to Africa in that regard, is that there's no-go areas in certain topics, and sex is definitely one of them. And one of the most consistent feedback we've been getting from young people is parents not talking to them about sex.
Yes.
And having teenagers myself, my son will rather wash dishes than listen to me talk to him about sex. So I understand how difficult it is for both the young person as well as the parent. And we've started to listen to them. We let them lead the conversation in the language they prefer. Of course, they're not allowed to be vulgar or obscene. But with their slang, you never know when they're being vulgar or obscene. So we let them talk in the language they understand, but we use the opportunity to also give them important health information. Namibia has done great work with the help of global partners like Global Fund, UNAIDS, in reducing HIV infection rates. We've halved it in less than a decade.
That's great.
It is great.
Really great.
And we are about to eliminate mother-to-child transmission. It's still an epidemic. It's still at epidemic levels, so it's not where we want it to be, but we're certainly seeing it come through in young girls. And they're not getting it from boys their age, they're getting it from an older generation due to transactional sex. So we're speaking to young girls a lot about negotiating power in relationships. We're speaking to young boys, adolescent men, about the responsibility that accompanies unprotected sex. And we're addressing the issue of young people more concerned about falling pregnant than contracting HIV. And you get a lot of insights. And it all ends up boiling down to the same thing, and that's patriarchy and patriarchal views, and addressing them in both girls and boys. And so we've taken an inclusive approach. Personally, I don't think the girls-only narrative is, it doesn't need to be strong in Namibia. Girls in Namibia are graduating from high school and university in bigger numbers than boys. So I think, yeah,
Panama too, yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Mrs. Laura, I know that cervical cancer is something very close to your heart, and you have been in Zambia, in Botswana, in Namibia, in different places, and you have been a strong advocate for making sure that we integrate the pink ribbon and the red ribbon.
That's right.
Tell us a little bit about this initiative. It's so important. We are seeing so many of those unfortunate adolescents dying from cervical cancer.
Well, after PEPFAR was launched, when we looked around the world and saw that people were living with AIDS or not contracting AIDS because people were so much more aware of how to protect themselves, we found out that women were living with AIDS, but they were dying from cervical cancer, which is also sexually transmitted through the HPV, the human papilloma virus. And there's a vaccine for the virus. They're really, in the United States, you never hear of women with cervical cancer because a pap smear is a part of regular physical examination, and women just find out early if they have any cervical lesions when they're easy to remove. So we launched Pink Ribbon, Red Ribbon, and we launched it in Namibia as well, to add the testing and treatment for the human papillomavirus and the vaccine to the AIDS platform that was already set up with PEPFAR. And so far, I think we've been very, very successful. Many countries now are trying to vaccinate girls. They're vaccinating 11 and 12-year-olds, but they really need to vaccinate women. They need to keep vaccinating, because even if you're an adult, if you're vaccinated, your chances of developing cancer from the human papillomavirus are decreased. But it's expensive. Those vaccines cost money. And in some countries, they can't afford that. And so it's really important that we work together, and certainly that the UN works to try to make sure countries can afford to vaccinate the people in their countries. Boys can be vaccinated as well. They're the ones who obviously can also get the HB virus.
Thank you very much. I want just to come to the issue of inclusiveness, because when you were talking, it's about that, the girls, the people without voice, the adolescents, how we make sure that they will really continue to benefit from our services. And you know, the new Secretary General Guterres wants really to make sure that social justice is central to his agenda, equity, and transforming UN to make it more relevant to the country actions. So I want just to ask you what we can do concretely to make this agenda of inclusiveness real, when we know that we have almost 100 million people today living with less than $2 a day. What we should do?
Well, I think of course, we are talking about making sure women are included into every part of life. That's part of what we've worked on to make sure that women aren't left out and that there's not gender inequality. But the fact is, we also need to pay attention to boys, and we need to pay attention to men. We need to have it be really inclusive. In the United States, like you were saying, in Namibia, now more girls go to college than boys. The numbers for girls are better. Boys are much more likely to be adjudicated. They're much more likely to get in trouble. And so I'm proud of what we've done to make sure women are included in all parts of society. But I also think we need to pay attention, like you say, to make sure that boys and men are also included. We've done a great job of working with women. Somebody asked me once, they said, "Why do you work with women? It's the men that have the problem."
I'm lucky to be with you today. Now, Monica, you want to say something about this critical agenda?
And I'd like to speak about from a more Namibian African perspective, and I think it's the removal of structural poverty, which is almost impossible to get out of in the absence of many barriers being removed. And I think it was at this platform last year where Sherry Blair talked about capital, confidence, and capacity. And I must agree with that, and that's really where we focus on. The last decade I've spent building a private equity fund. So obviously the provision of capital is something that we're very serious about and that we fundraise for, but really to give it to people who need it to break a poverty cycle. Capacity as well, it's education, it's education, it's education, but not only from an academic perspective. I think a lot of human beings, regardless of where they are in the world, are tripped up because of a lack of knowledge of how to direct their thoughts in a constructive way. And then the confidence part, I think, is the most debilitating part. And as a mother of two girls, I think my biggest responsibility to my daughters is to teach them confidence. And that's what we do with all our programs as well. It's confidence building in male and females, but also in the African narrative, to tell our children, African children, that we can do a lot ourselves, and we must reject a negative narrative of our continent because it disempowers us to take the solutions back that we need to devise.
How to fight against violence, violence against women?
Violence against women? Violence.
Very serious issue.
I think we've got generally high levels of violence in some of our societies, especially post-conflict societies like Namibia. A man is still more likely to be killed by another man as opposed to a woman being killed. But the violence in intimate partner relationships in Namibia is at problematic proportions. And again, it all boils down to the same things. It boils down to economic emancipation and also engaging men in a way that the progress of women doesn't look like it's threatening the progress of men, and doing those two things at the same time.
Well, I believe that we should all work on leaving no one behind. And by leaving no one behind, I mean truly no one. Not only in our countries, but as countries economically increasing growth, Panama we're doing 6% of growth. It's a big economy coming. We have the canal. But as you were saying, accountability is so important in our countries that the money goes where it really has to go, with priorities. And not only for us as a country, but helping other countries in our areas and leaving no one behind. I think we spoke about this 2 years ago with a team of health ministers of Latin America. And I was saying, let's leave no one behind. If I have something good, a good program that is working on eradicating poverty or eradicating HIV, let's share it. I learned with the First Ladies of Africa, they meet every year here in the United Nations, and they share their work. So I said, why don't we, the First Ladies of America, do the same thing? Get together, see our issues, change, how we say, little tips of what we do, how it works in your country. From Uganda, we took the how was it called, for eradicating poverty with Jeffrey Sachs, the program that they have, Millennium Villages. Yeah. The Millennium Villages, and we transformed it in Panama to bio-communities. And we took the 14 the ones that were like in the lowest of every rate, and we helped them grow. And right now, we moved our chart as responsibility. And I just want to say that we just have to leave no one behind. Right now in Panama, just to close, our medicines are free. Our pruebas, tests are free. And we try to work very hard so everybody can make sure to get the test and get the medicine. But it's free in our country. We got to do that. And
unfortunately, I need to bring this conversation to a close. It was a privilege for me to be here with those inspiring leaders. And I want to say thanks to you, and I want to ask Anita McBride to offer some closing thoughts. Anita is the perfect person to close this discussion. She served as an assistant to the president for President Bush and chief of staff to Laura Bush. Anita, could you just take the floor?
That was very fast. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Roll without a rulebook.
Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that. On behalf of the Concordia Leadership Council, I want to thank our terrific panelists, Mrs. Bush, Mrs. Gallegos, and Mrs. Castillo, and our terrific moderator, Michelle Sidibe, and the George W. Bush Institute for organizing this very important plenary session. Concordia is very proud to be a partnering organization with the Bush Institute and providing a platform to highlight the first of its kind analysis about First Ladies and the unique opportunity they have to lead in ways that change lives. As Michelle has said, I had the good fortune to work with Laura Bush as her chief of staff in the White House, and I saw firsthand the impact she had and her counterparts had all around the world. And the Role Without a Rule book is a much-needed body of work that examines the expanding role of First Ladies, providing interesting case studies for women's leadership. Concordia is an action tank, not a think tank, and this session clearly shows how a First Lady's podium, when used effectively, is a catalyst for action and for change, and that there is even greater value when they come together and can work together. Thank you very much to all of you. Appreciate it. Thank you for this session.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Wonderful. I hope it was okay.